each other. The question that we'll be talking about is whether we have an individual moral obligation to donate a significant portion of our income to international aid agencies. And you guys are going to be arguing that we do, which is in line with the philosopher Peter Singer's argument. And you will be arguing that we do not have a moral obligation to donate to international aid agencies. Here's the format. We'll have opening arguments, which will start with you. So you will give your opening arguments, and then we'll do an argument from you guys, and then a rebuttal from you. You will present your next argument, you will rebut. You will present your next argument, and then you will rebut. There will be 2 new arguments presented by each group, 2 rebuttals, and then closing arguments. Okay? Now, we'll have, say, 2 minutes between the arguments and the rebuttals. So you'll have a chance to talk and get your rebuttal ready before you present it after the other team's argument. Immediately after your rebuttal, you'll present your next argument. And then the other team will have 2 minutes to prepare their rebuttal. We will all talk for a few minutes before you actually begin. So if you have any questions, we can discuss them. But yeah.
I was just going to say, can our team come over here for a second? We'll chat about what these rules imply.
Okay. Yes.
Remind us that we do ask them before they speak to give their name.
Okay, so, right, everyone please give your name before you speak. Also, the one other thing I should mention. So Dr. Borg will have the opportunity to ask you questions. If she has anything in particular that she would like you to clarify or that she would like to challenge. So give her a moment to do that after you've presented an argument. Okay. Okay.
No?
Well, it's just yes, that is what we use. Whoever is yeah, just don't. Okay. Oh, yeah. Focus on the BBC.
No, it's before.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. And say, I think what you can really focus on is that there must be something that signals what he says is just not morally right? Why is it? Because why do we not feel that we're all drinking you want to? Did you contribute? Okay, if you're not, then stick with what you got. Stick with it. No pressure. Say rather than say we know, say it is immediately. Focus on the outrageousness.
Oh, we're going. I'm ready.
From the standpoint of timing, by the way, everybody knows the rule, the idea behind the amount of time allotted for each speech. Roughly 5 minutes? Roughly 5 minutes. We're not going to talk. So we expect you to honor the honor system. And if you go way long, we're going to tell you to shut it. Have fun. But we'll never say the bad word.
My name is Annalise Delgado. Help! Help! Someone help me! I can't swim! I can't swim! These are the words that are screamed out on a brisk April morning as you walk to work. You see a small head, a head that could only be belonging to a child, frantically bobbing up and down in a nearby pond. Help me! His cries become fainter as his little body grows weaker and water starts crashing into his lungs. You have a decision to make. You could jump in the pond and save this child who is about to drown. Or you could turn a blind eye and pretend not to notice the howling calls of a dying child because you don't want to ruin your $300 suit. What do you do? If walking near a pond and you could save a child's life but ruin your suit, what would you do? Most people say they would save this child. They reason that the life of a child is worth more than a $300 suit. It's the moral thing to do. It is the right thing to do. There are 3 main reasons why most people would save this child. 1, they are aware of the problem. 2, there is something they can do to alleviate the problem. And most importantly, 3, if they do not intervene, a child will die. Let me repeat that again. If they do not intervene, a child will die. Keeping this in mind, according to UNICEF, more than 26,000 children die each day. 26,000 children die each and every day. And the worst part about this is that we are allowing this to happen. There are 26,000 children around the world drowning in their own ponds of disease, of hunger, of thirst, of lack of shelter. And we are morally blameworthy because we are allowing these children to die. Not helping people in need around the world, even in our own communities, is morally blameworthy. It's as morally blameworthy as is not helping a drowning child and walking away. Why shouldn't it be? We're aware of these problems around the world. There's something we can do to help. And more importantly, if we don't, someone will die when someone could have lived. But enough of this anonymity. Anonymity leads to apathy. Esperanza could have died. Jalal could have died. Pa Song could have died. Fatima could have died. Ashley could have died. We are morally obligated to alleviate the most immediate and pertinent needs. We must provide assistance when a natural disaster strikes or basic subsistence such as food and water when it is not available. We must first help the people who are balancing the fine thread between life and death. We must then help strengthen these communities to build infrastructures, educate, and help nations develop. We must ourselves plant the seeds of change, care and protect the sprouts, and witness a garden in bloom. We certainly have the means to do this. We are a society that spends $150 on a pair of sneakers and $5 on a cup of coffee. And yet we don't provide a few dollars to feed a child or vaccinate a baby from fierce diseases. You will hear from my colleagues elaborating on the immediate needs and benefits of developing infrastructures. You will also hear from my opponents. They will tell you that it's not your problem, that you are not responsible. Don't be the person slinking away from the calls of a drowning child in your $300 suit, mumbling the words, "It's not my problem."
Hi everyone, my name is Alex. I would like to take this moment to thank Professor Hoffman and Mr. Hart for this wonderful dinner. Yes? Hold on a second now. Why are you guys clapping? Isn't this exactly what you say we shouldn't be doing? This is a luxury. We are not spending this money to help others. How is this right? Can you answer that? I would like to say their argument is based off of Singer's argument that if we can prevent suffering in any such way, we should do so, as long as it doesn't cause, as long as we have the means to do it. If we have money, we need to give it away. That is what needs to happen. But this is... This completely ignores the moral obligation we have. It assumes that we have a moral obligation to help others in dire situations. Singer's argument completely ignores the moral intuition we have But this analogy of the child is completely flawed. It completely ignores the long-term consequences of such of donation. When in the analogy, the child either lives or dies. It's only in the short term. It completely ignores such things as, if we send money to development, it'll cause an increase in resource consumption and overpopulation, and this will increase pain. And therefore, the argument is fundamentally flawed in that aspect. Another way is that when we are trying to save the child, it is our moral obligation to save the child. It's only due to immediacy. It completely Singer's argument ignores this responsibility, and it assumes that everything is equal. The problem with this, though, is we do have responsibilities. We do cause things, and he ignores justice, and we will be arguing against that too. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Joseph Bass. Before I begin, I'd like to make known that last week we agreed on a $2,000 budget for this event, and we decided that anything that was not spent would be donated to a charity. We haven't decided which charity yet, but I'm sure we'll find a good one. A man who walks to work every day passes by a lake between his office and his home. Some afternoons, children can be seen playing up to their waist. They're usually attended. But on this April day, however, a child bubs up and down, unattended. Now, regardless of this man's station, no matter his job, no matter how many kids he has to feed, no matter he is a king or a beggar, his decision to leave this child drowning is morally abhorrent. His material loss is insignificant when measured against a life. A life is infinitely more valuable than a pair of shoes. A moral obligation is an unbreakable pact that every individual has with humanity. You don't get to decide this pact. You can't say nay. It was never your choice. Whether you choose to meet these obligations or not does not change their existence. These obligations are just as real whether they are being followed or ignored. We are all morally obligated to keep each other alive, especially in times of crisis. The Sumatra Andama earthquake shook Indonesia in December 2004. It was the third largest quake ever recorded, its magnitude 9.3. The devastating tsunamis that followed killed citizens in 14 countries. It's during times like these, when children are drowning, that people are motivated by the pact they have with humanity. Unbelievable and heroic measures are taken to provide relief to the victims. In this case, the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs organized satellites to take images and information of the devastation site and relay it to the disaster rescue organizations like the Red Cross. 55 governments donated to this cause. Some of them include Iran, the UK, North Korea, Australia, China, Russia, Switzerland. Governments which in foreign policy will never deal with each other, they band together to help people in need. And these donations pay to provide for the necessities of life: food, water, shelter, and medicine. Listen to this sentence. The people of Haiti are devastated and are starving. We have the means to help them, and we have chosen not to. These words should shock you, because it is self-evident that all people deserve to have their necessities met. It is so evident that every government has agencies in place for this policy alone. It is so evident that food drives are year-round. It is so evident that hospitals give care day and night. This is all evidence that the people of the world understand their moral obligation. It's irrefutable. Food, water, shelter, and medicine are not luxury items, and they are not expensive. $20 in our market can buy 15 pounds of rice. and 15 pounds is enough to stave off 60 people from starvation. Such an insignificant sacrifice can have a tremendous impact, and it's wrong for anyone not to take that offer.
I'm Matthew Jordan. Now, while our opponents are making a very nice argument appealing to a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings, what they're not doing is pushing for all of Singer's full argument. Singer would argue that so long as we still have something to give, we must continue to give until we would all be at an equal phase, as long as we must give till it would not cause more harm than good. And if even with the dinner where we would donate the rest to charity, he would argue that anything we have done that was in excess, anything we could have gone without, we should have given instead. In addition to this, they also mentioned death overall being, what Singer pushes is death being bad. Unfortunately, this cannot always be the case. These countries oftentimes are overpopulated. We cannot say we must stop all famine. If we stop all famine, what will surely happen is more people will come to those countries from reproduction. And if we keep preventing the natural population curves from stopping them, they will continue to grow larger and larger past the carrying capacity. We will cause more problems, and if we proceed to believe we must still give more aid, we must continue on giving the aid, and we must keep building to the point we will not be able to give any more. Now, while it may sound bad that we have to let people die, oftentimes there are no real alternatives, and people must die, and we must accept that this is part of the world. We can't shelter everyone like a small child forever. Singer would argue that we must help everyone as much as we can till we're all equal, but if we do this, we will all be in the same place as them, and where does that leave us? What does that give us? What do we have?
My name is Trey Llewellyn. One of our biggest problems with Singer is that we feel we have no obligation because we didn't cause the situations that these people are in. Singer never addresses the cause of the hardships that the people face that he wants to help. If we aren't the direct cause, then we aren't responsible. We aren't saying that you shouldn't give. We would even say that giving is nice. It's praiseworthy. But you're not morally obligated to do so. According to Singer, you have an equal responsibility to help people that you have personally hurt, people that have just innocently had misfortune, and people that have caused their own problems. Now, I think we would all feel that this is a little bit off. It doesn't seem fair. But these are things that have to be considered when you discuss whether or not people deserve aid. They're very important. And this lack of consideration of whether or not people deserve aid or whether they don't deserve it just shows how unrealistically black and white Singer's argument it is, and therefore it's very irrational.
My name's Steve. So far what it seems my opponent here is saying is that we don't have a direct responsibility to aid those in need because we haven't harmed them in any way. But I think I can disprove this. Let's take a few examples. One such example I would think is overfishing. This kind of overfishing happens in Tanzania, it happens in Japan, it happens in Patagonia, the region of South America. And this overfishing hurts the natives. It hurts the people on the margins of life and propels them even more towards the edge. It causes some of them to take such drastic measures that they die in the process. We, here in the U.S., 80% of our seafood is imported from 130 countries. I think that out of those 130 countries, we can safely say that there are countries where overfishing negatively impacts the population. Another example I'd like to propose is the example of the extraction industries. They go into countries, they negotiate with the oligarchies in these countries, and they haggle over how much is required for them to buy up some land so they can extract minerals from it. And when they do this, they hurt the people in that land. Drilling oil in fertile land reduces the availability of that land to grow crops. It reduces the ability of that population to sustain itself. And where does this money contributed go? These big businesses pay to the people governing these countries. Very often these people are nameless, but nevertheless, the money stays at the top. There is nothing done to distribute the money fairly in most cases. We, as individuals, we play a role in financing this. When we buy our oil from certain companies, ExxonMobil and Hess being two examples, we contribute to the continued oppression of the populations. As individuals, we're also responsible for this human-made climate change that is occurring in our world. Each individual in the U.S., each individual here, we, as individuals, release the 18 tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year with our energy consumption. And this is hurting the world, especially the poor countries that so desperately need a sturdy climate, a stable climate to survive. Places like Sudan, places like Ethiopia, where there is fertile farmland. And as we heat up the world, as we cause the oceans to rise, as we cause temperature to fluctuate, the rate of crop growth decreases by 10% for every 1 degree change in Celsius. Can you imagine? Pretty soon, it's going to be obvious that people in South Asia, people in Vietnam, people in Laos won't be able to feed themselves because their rice harvest has become so meager. People in Sudan won't be able to grow wheat. They'll starve. And it's primarily because of us as individuals here polluting the world with our SUVs, polluting the world with our cars, polluting the world with our TV watching. We have a direct responsibility to the people because of the individual harm we cause. It's like the butterfly effect. A butterfly flapping its wings, some say, can cause a tornado, a hurricane, a whatever in some places of the world. That's how it is. In a globalized society, no one is truly independent from one another. Everything we do has a direct impact on what is happening. If that doesn't convince you, let me try another approach. Let's take this statement known as Kant's categorical imperative. It's basically saying that when we act, we will a world and where we expect others to act the same way. There are two problems with this, because I've established that we have a duty to ameliorate the harms that we've caused. And one of the ways we can ameliorate these harms is by giving to the aid agencies that Singer is proposing we give to in his proposal. So, if we can ameliorate this by giving to charity, and we do not, we are willing a world where no one gives to charity. Could we will that world? Could we will all people to be so uncompassionate and to not think of their fellow man? Would any of us here even want that world? Would any of us even want to consider the possibility that when we're down on our luck, nobody's going to help us out? and they're just going to leave us to die. I don't think so. And if you're refusing to give, you're making an exception of yourself, and you're committing the fallacy of special pleading, and you're acting like you're better than others. So you should just stop right there. So I think I've pretty much bolstered my case and the case of my team, and I hope this has convinced you guys as well.
Sorry, I wrinkled up my paper. I just want to thank everyone for coming out. It was really nice that everyone's here just to kind of hear us talk, and thank you guys for working hard on your papers and everything. My name's David Stefan. My colleague Joseph just outlined the urgency with which we need to act to provide aid to the most desperate of the world's people. People who lack basic human needs, such as water, shelter, medicine. People who are struggling to survive, much like that boy in the pond, struggling to survive. We could enhance people who lack basic human needs. These needs could not only be met, but the lives of the struggling to swim, much like the boy in the pond, could be enhanced if everyone followed Singer. See, Singer's argument goes beyond just providing basic needs for the people who are drowning. If everyone had a moral responsibility to give, the resources available would be astounding. The seeds for change could really begin to take root in places like Sudan and Bermuda. Places where the basic infrastructure we take for granted every day, such as roads, hospitals, schools, could actually take root. The single most important factor to a country's overall wealth of its citizens is education. A country's natural wealth and education of its populace are highly correlated. In developed countries with a high level of national income, the population usually has more years of education than low-income countries. Countries with a highly educated workforce can achieve higher economic growth, and at the same time, wealthy countries have the financial resources to invest more in education. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the most key portion of that sentence. Invest more in education. Poor countries do not have the resources to invest in education. And I believe everyone here will agree that education is the building block to a good society. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Why does this affect me? Why should I care? Well, I would like you guys to imagine yourself at a pond. Imagine yourself out there at that lake, and it's crystal clear, and it's almost like glass. If you were to walk to the middle of the lake and dab your finger, and you would see ripples that slowly start out small, but grow until they reach the edge of the pond. This is much how education is in a society. Nothing has more of an effect in every facet of the society than education. But the poor countries cannot fund education because they lack the resources. And this is where Singer's argument has real strength. If everyone contributes, then the resources are available. The average amount of education in a country that offers free education is 12 years. In countries like Sudan and Burma, it is 4 years of education. That would mean that the average citizen does not go to middle school. This will cause a real problem in the society. Education and basic human rights are linked. When you have a highly educated society, you also have an increase in human rights and women's rights as well. The biggest signifier of a wealthy and free nation are the rights of women. Women who are more educated are more likely to have lower fertility rates and increase a family's ability to sustain itself and decrease the stress on the nuclear family. And many programs are currently in place that allow for the empowerment of women. These programs have at their core Singer's argument that it is imperative to give in order to help those who are drowning and who need it the most. One organization that symbolize this is microloans. Microloans donate small amounts of money, as little as $25, out to women or men who have business ideas, such as basket weaving, goat farming, or making clothing, things of that nature. The success rate of these programs is outstanding. I would just hear a little bit of the statistics about one of these organizations called Kiva. The total amount of loans made through Kiva is the total amount of money given is 300 million. That's small donations from a huge group of people. The number of borrowers that have received loans is over 1 million. The number of loans that have been funded is around 600,000. And here, ladies and gentlemen, is the most amazing statistic about microloans. The current repayment rate for all those loans is 98.92%. By giving a small amount, you empower the society. These are not handouts, ladies and gentlemen. These are giving people the tools and resources needed to enhance their lives. And not only enhance their lives, but enhance the communities around them. And that is the heart of Singer's argument. It is a way to alleviate the suffering of the poor of the world and allow for skills to create. As the old adage goes, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man to fish, he eats for a lifetime. Singer's argument's power is the ability of the collective whole giving what little they can for the betterment of the world. And that is a world that we all would like to live in.
You guys have a minute, actually. You got a couple minutes.
Hi, I'm Cassie Hottenstein. David had a really good argument, and as a teacher's daughter, I totally agree with education being a number one priority in the world right now, and that can solve a lot of problems today. However, I understand that poor countries do not have the resources to invest in their own education. However, do we have the resources to invest in their education? As your friend Stephen said, there are a lot of problems with pollution and environmental. There's a lot of problems in our environment nowadays, and we, as humans, we are the cause of all that. However, I believe that if we do continue to provide foreign aid, that these conditions will just get worse. 91% of carbon dioxide emissions come from the fossil fuels, which we put into the environment. Obviously, we're producing way too many carbon emissions now, so why develop these third world countries and just make it worse? Helping these third world countries actually encourages further pollution of the earth, and we need to worry about the carbon emissions we have now, not develop another country so they can use more fossil fuels. Not to mention resource depletion. First of all, if we do educate these countries, resources can't come out of thin air. We will run out of natural gas in 64 years, and that's just with the current rates. Developing countries will actually increase the rate that we use natural gas, and we will run out of all our necessary fossil fuels even faster. And if we develop all countries, we will not have resources for everyone, and that plays into overpopulation. David Klein did an experiment on St. Matthew's Island. He moved 29 reindeer onto the island with no wolves or human hunters. And it's just like how humans don't have any natural predators themselves. In 19 years, the reindeer population grew to over 6,000. And 3 years later, the population crashed to 42 animals. Every animal was in bad condition, and there was only one male in the population. Now, the carrying capacity of this island started out with 5 deer per square kilometer. That's how many deer it was able to hold. Now, the population after that first 19 years actually grew to 18 deer per square kilometer, an obvious problem. But after the crash, there was only 0.126 deer per square kilometer. However, that crash was actually still too many deer for that island to hold. all of the natural sources had been depleted. There was no food to eat, no water to be had. The carrying capacity of St. Matthew's Island had been reduced by 97.5%. And that will be what happens to our Earth if we continue to help develop the world in this way. Yes, providing aid and education will stabilize our population, but we are already overpopulated. We already need to reduce our population as it is. And stabilization is only short term. As utilitarians, we need to look at a much longer term than just a few years, because in a century, we're out. And by the way, if we apply the reindeer numbers there, the carrying capacity of the Earth right now is 175 million. Compare that to the 7 billion people we have on this Earth right now. If we don't save the planet, we will have nothing to live on, and regardless of aid. We need to set our priorities straight, save the environment first, and work out our resources before we try to give our few resources to other people.
My name is Michael Hertz. What happens if some organizations or countries budget for accidents and others do not? If each country is solely responsible for its own well-being, poorly managed countries will suffer, but they can learn from their experience. They may mend their ways and learn to budget for infrequent but certain emergencies. For example, the weather varies from year to year, and periodic crop failures are certain. A wise and competent government will save production for these years. Such lessons as this have been taught for centuries. Joseph taught the Pharaoh this over 2,000 years ago. But still, most of Earth does not follow such policies. Organizations such as the World Food Bank take the idea of taking everybody's surplus and providing for everyone's needs. The problem is we're running out of those resources. We sit in a global lifeboat. There are many outside the lifeboat, but there are only so many lifeboats, and each lifeboat can only hold so many. There are three options. You can keep a safe number of people in the lifeboat. You can bring the lifeboat to its carrying capacity, risk disaster, or you can try and let everybody in. Singer's argument by far offers the latter. What happens when you let everybody in? The boat sinks, everybody drowns. Complete justice, but complete catastrophe all the same. All these quotes were pulled from Garrett Hardin's essay on lifeboat ethics, the case against helping the poor. The argument is tough. I'll acknowledge that. But by many scientists, and it's nice to look at the ones that are not affiliated with an organization. Most of these have their hands tied. They can't say the wrong thing. But scientists such as James Lovelock, I believe, independent study, funds his own research, projects that if we continue using resources at the rate we already do, we will run out within 100 years, completely. He expects that for the next 20 or so years after we hit that point, Earth will be, to say cataclysmic is an understatement. It will be a disaster, and the population will shrink, most likely by about 90%, if we're lucky. The problem is, by exceeding our carrying capacity of Earth, we will find that we've used up the extra resources. the resources can't replenish themselves anymore. I love the example of hearing how we can always produce more food. Eat vegetarian. These are great ideas. But food is an expandable resource, as we know. Better technologies have been able to expand it. Hardin likes to point out that water will be the problem. Granted, in the more immediate future, we see wars over oil, natural fuels, and, well, coal and oil. But soon, kind of like in the Dune books, the conflict will be over water, because there will not be enough water to sustain everyone.
Minutes to prepare on the rebuttal, is that right?
We've been a little loose about the time, so.
Not exactly 2 minutes.
My name is Alex Androwski. Now, before I speak on this past argument, I need to say this. Singer's beliefs are not the topic of this debate. No one's going to debate it. Singer did say that. But the topic of debate relates to our moral obligation to give anything at all, to those we can. Now, my opponents would have me concede the issue of overpopulation, to take this insult lying down. But I do not concede to this issue. I will not have my opponents snickering behind my back as I fall for their trap. For before any issue of overuse of resources by way of population is even mentioned, we must ask ourselves, are we using these resources efficiently? Are we efficiently using them universally? Are we? I would wager we aren't, but I would also wager that we certainly won't improve without assisting others on this earth. There is mismanagement of resources going on, ladies and gentlemen. There are entire countries that right now are on the brink of starvation, but that are sitting on farmable land. A study of Sudan recently showed that nearly 90% of Sudanese land is farmable, but only 4% of that Sudanese land is farmed. Without assistance, it seems unlikely that this infrastructure will improve. But maybe this example means nothing to you. After all, Sudan is so far away. Who cares, right? But look, there are examples of inefficiency right here in the United States. Look at the population density in New York. 18.9 million people living over 6,720 square miles. The resources here are only imported because the land is covered by a swamp of human beings. Yet, even so close as 50 miles away, there is land that is sparsely populated, the resources rarely tapped. Now, as for the issue of the deer, we're not deer, ladies and gentlemen. We're speaking. Right now, I am discussing a debate on moral obligation. I doubt that a deer would. However, that male deer among 41 females, lucky guy. Reindeers cannot speak. They do not philosophize. They do not have technology. They cannot improve. But if we have an issue of the resource of water, there's plenty of water. We can improve it. We can synthesize it. And we can clear it. There's no issue there. How dare we even pretend to concern ourselves with overpopulation when, in this very country, in this very state, we are not using all resources efficiently? We do a crime in allowing people to die for such white man burden-inspired reasons. These reasons, well, they're not very reasonable at all.
Hello, my name is Samuel Brew. Our opponents today would have you believe that it is not our moral obligation to help the world's suffering individuals. The amount of money required to make a significant impact on the world's poorest populations is so small that it would not have any noticeable effect on our standard of living. As members of the first world, we have the ability to alleviate suffering and promote higher quality of life for a greater number of people in the world. We are not promoting any government coercion or requirement that as individuals you must give a determined percentage of your income. We only insist that you acknowledge that as members of a prosperous first world nation, that we are morally obligated to alleviate the suffering of those in the world. Joseph discussed the necessity of immediate crisis aid and life-saving assistance that can only occur through monetary donations. Water, food, shelter, and medical assistance is of the utmost priority during humanitarian crises. These basic provisions could save a vast number of lives. David discussed the importance of developing infrastructure in third world nations to lessen their dependence on wealthy nations for their well-being. We need to teach members of these nations how to fish so that they can become unhooked from external assistance. As we have shown, arguments claiming that suffering is not our problem or responsibility, or that any assistance would be futile, are built on poor ethical foundations and are empirically insufficient. Alex pointed out that investment in developmental programs tend to lower fertility rates and stabilize population growth. He also brought to light that overpopulation is not as much of an issue as is the misallocation of land and available resources. He also discussed how Singer's argument is not actually one of requiring a certain percentage of funding to go from out of our incomes, but that giving anything is better than giving nothing. Stephen pointed out that in a globalized marketplace, much of our material prosperity comes at the expense of less fortunate nations. Over the course of our mercantile past, we have exploited indigenous people, raped their lands, overfished their waters, and undermined political stability. We have also contributed heavily to the alarming trend of global climate change, which threatens all of humanity, especially those regions which lack the resources to deal with the consequences of environmental catastrophe. How then could it not be our duty to give aid in attempts to alleviate suffering that we in part are responsible for? Aside from assigning blame, we ought to act in ways we wish that would be universalized. Who then would wish to live in a world where one would not lend a hand to their fellow man? A world where you would pass a child drowning and not stop to help. If we are able, which we are, to alleviate suffering globally, especially at a small expense to our own personal well-being, then we are morally obligated to do so. Thank you.
My name is Alan Wise. To begin, we would like to point out that, in fact, Singer's argument does state you are to give everything you possibly can to the point that it is harmful to yourself. Once you reach that point, you are no longer required to give and you are no longer held morally responsible. However, we do not feel that their argument has been fully showing this. They're making statements along the lines of, by helping these impoverished nations, we are only required to give a minimal amount. However, that isn't Singer's statement. His statement is we are to give the maximum possible. Furthermore, they would have us believe, they appeal to emotion with the children. Yes, you are interfering. Everyone agrees that you should save the child. We don't believe that you shouldn't. However, it is different because of intimacy and being close in the environment. It's in your community rather than elsewhere. According to our opponents, we must shirk all luxury. For instance, the very clothes they are wearing, the higher quality rather than simple t-shirts and things that are cheaper that you can buy at thrift stores. That in itself is a violation of their argument. Furthermore, the dinner that we ate tonight, we chose items of higher quality in that as well. According to Singer's argument, we should have given up all of that for the most basic of substances. Also, Singer's argument states aid to everyone, not just people in need. It goes to everyone equally. This means that the very people who are turning around and using our aid for financing their own drugs or alcohol or any other addictions, it is still required, according to Singer's argument, where we do not feel that we are morally responsible to maintain their substance abuse. They expect us to give to the point where we increase and develop a stable population. However, they lacked the ability to realize that by providing this education, you are decreasing the death rate as well as decreasing the birth rate. So the population itself suffers greatly at the time until the elderly of the populations die off. They don't take into account the fact that by introducing these new hospitals, by introducing these new roadways, by introducing these new forms of education, you are in fact killing off the resources that are required throughout the whole world. There are a limited number of resources, even water. It requires energy and many other processes that we currently do not have the full capability to provide to the entire world at once. Furthermore, by doing this, we consume everything we have to the point of equilibrium across the whole world. We do not feel we are obligated to bring ourselves down to a point where we are barely surviving in order to make others barely survive.
Okay, we'll let Dr. Ward ask her question first.
Okay. Okay, to the pro side. I certainly agree that we should be giving money to people who are less fortunate than we are.
but I kind of understood from your argument that we should be giving to the most destitute. And what happens to people who are what I refer to as the medium poor? For example, students at UNF who we would like to be able to give a scholarship so they can do an internship or study abroad, and you're not poor in the sense that a child in Sudan is poor, but then you're not rich enough that you're not, born with the silver spoon in your mouth. So does Singer require that we couldn't give, a scholarship to the medium poor?
I can answer this question. What we're proposing is we're trying to raise the bar globally. If we start with the most destitute, we give them the need the human basic needs. Then we can work on their development and make them self-sustaining. And we raise them above our own median. We raise them up to first world status, and then we have a new destitute. But that destitute is not lacking in the basic human needs. So by starting at the lowest level and bringing it to the top, globally, we all become better.
So I think the answer then is no, you can't give a scholarship to somebody.
No. The difference is that we're recommending an individual moral obligation, whereas the university has no morals.
Well, I'm still confused because I think what this side would argue, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that, for example, there may be one of you in this room who is going to be the next Secretary of State or President of the United States, and only you can have the opportunities to do these sorts of things that they do at Harvard and Yale and the other Ivies. Go for internships at the World Food Program, study abroad for a year or a semester, and yet, if it's true that we have to give every single extra amount that we have over and above our own subsistence to poor people, then we can't give you those kinds of scholarships. And that may lead to everybody being, as Alan said, everybody is just kind of at this subsistence level, but what happens to the person that might have been, the next cancer researcher or the next president of the United States that we couldn't give a scholarship to because they were too well off?
Well, we weren't saying that. And any part of our argument, we never said we're going to give to the point where we are at their same level. We never said that in the argument. They said that in their argument.
Well, I think that's what Singer says.
Let me just throw in something from a debate stand, just pure format. The fact that Singer said it, no one disputes. We debated long and hard on how to frame the proposition tonight. At one point, the proposition said there's a moral obligation to give X percentage. At another point, we said there's a moral obligation to give until it hurts. To some extent, the Singer argument. We rejected both of those. Read the proposition. You can say, we think you should debate what he really meant, not what the proposition is. That makes debate pretty tough.
I'm going to add one thing to that very quickly, though, for the sake of this group here, which is that you all have to give an account of what the moral foundation for your claim is. And you're drawing on Singer for that foundation. So unless you want to give some other foundation rather than utilitarian, then you may actually have to respond to this type of question, because that's the argument. It's from the utilitarian perspective.
Well, in response to your question of what happens to the middle, you have to think is with the amount of resources that would be given by everyone giving, I believe you'll find that you can fill these gaps. You won't have this, think of if we pay taxes, that's right, but think of if everyone contributed in the state of Florida. We always talk about this. Everyone contributed to our tax base in the state of Florida. How much money we'd have to be able to do all these things. And that's where you would be able to actually fund exactly what you want to do, because you would have the resources available. If you just look at our country in isolation, if everyone were to give, if we were to close loopholes on the rich and they gave, it would increase what we can do.
when we close those loopholes, shouldn't the money that was gained go to the poor in Sudan and not to a middle-class student at UNF who simply can't afford to go to Italy to work at the World Food Program for a semester?
Well, I think it's just that you'll have the resources to make those decisions. Right now, we're not even able to contemplate that. It's just, yes.
Alan had his hand up over here. Did you still?
No.
Sorry.
And suppose we were to make that decision, would it be so bad that there will always be a Secretary of State, and it might not be me, and it might be someone from Sudan, but if we were to give it to anybody, who's to say that the most destitute don't deserve it also?
Just in a structural standpoint, we kind of have a question about the proposition that you said to read the proposition, because, well, we basically only had today to prepare. I'll admit that. We basically had today to prepare, in all honesty, and we were told that we had to be arguing against Singer, and so we were basically taking what Singer said from his article, and
it was just that you told us to read the proposition to see what you were really arguing, but I don't think that we ever did see a proposition like that. We just know that we're arguing.
If you're holding this group of people and Dr. Borg and myself responsible for what Mr. Hoffman did,
we were just saying in our defense.
I thought I had given of myself equally to that. It's obvious.
No, that's fair, actually. And so it's now the proposition, though, is one which follows directly from Singer's argument. And I don't think that there's any way of getting around that unless you wanted to give some totally different moral foundation to it. Now, so on the other hand, I think you guys, your arguments against Singer are arguments against their proposition. And they stated their proposition at the beginning, and you guys are responding to it. Now, it is the case that actually, I should have made it a little more explicit for you all. Exactly the phrasing of their proposition. I actually grant you that. Pardon.
I thought, frankly, we were debating shouted at Singer. So, I just want to make. I think this is a fairly important thing. First of all, it's always important that we both debate the same topic if we're having a debate. That's just sort of one of those reasonably fair things to ask in all discourse. But the other thing is, just because Singer goes all the way to equal pain, equal gain kind of thing, doesn't mean that his argument of a moral obligation cannot be used to justify a lesser gift. And he himself argued for a lesser gift in many circumstances. If anybody believes that there's a Christian argument for do unto others as you would have, there are quotations people can pull out of the Bible that say, give everything to the community and take from the community what you need.
Which was
completely communist system. I'm sorry?
Which was the point of Lifeboat. Give to everybody. Everybody counts.
Yeah. But also there are arguments that say because the church needed the dough, let's let some rich people have riches and encourage them to have riches. In fact, let's tell all these fools they can be rich, and that way they'll either accept their poverty or work harder for riches. Point is that just because Singer went all the way doesn't mean that his argument can't be used for a lesser gift.
I think Ben.
I'm not convinced that that's the case. I don't know if this is... Well, why not? Everybody's debating. I'll debate. I don't see where we're drawing arbitrary distinctions here between just debating. But Alan, would you like to say something?
I was actually going to make the comment that even from a utilitarian point of view, you are providing a minimal amount, but you're still if you're saying give minimally because you have a moral obligation, at that point you erase the line of how much you should give, because you're still allowing other nations to have that poverty and the suffering.
Sure.
Even then, it's still it goes right back to.
I'm not altogether sure that I should give Mary Borg's student all the money they require to go to Italy. I could give them some, and that's better than giving them none.
But at that point, you're no longer arguing.
To take any argument out of absurdum gets you right there to absurdity. You don't need to go there. Does Peter Singer look starved to you? How did he get to the conference in New York? If he flew instead of swam, stay in Melbourne.
Although, guys, I want to give you a chance here to respond to that. And just tell us what the basic principle of utilitarianism is.
The basic principle of utilitarianism is the overall benefit or happiness or lack of suffering should outweigh the amount of suffering or pleasure.
Without regard to what sorts of things?
Anything.
Right, basically anything. And who in particular, say, deserves it, who, in other words,
there's no distinction.
Yeah, exactly.
Basically, all of economics is based on utilitarianism, and what it says is that you keep giving until the marginal benefit is no longer greater than the marginal cost. So as long as $1 for me is going to provide less benefits to me than it is for the poor person, I should give it to them. And so basically it would require me to give all of my money away except until whatever benefit they're going to get from the dollar is exactly equal to the benefit I'm getting for the
So
dollar.
that does bring us back to
That's the utilitarian argument.
Yeah.
It isn't the proposition we're debating tonight.
I would argue that Singer's not a great utilitarian in that sense. Well, with my argument, though, overpopulation is a problem, and I believe that Singer kind of short-sides it when he is talking about giving aid, and he doesn't think about more use of resources.
But I had an issue about that one, too. So I had one little bone to pick with these guys about does that mean we can't give to the medium poor? And over here on your side, I think that you're missing the point that if we all gave our money away the way that Singer would like us to do, we in America cannot continue to consume the way we've been consuming. So that we would have less use of resources in our country and more use of resources in their country. So I'm not sure we would reach the carrying capacity like that.
Even distributing all the resources across the earth, it was that kind of calculation they gave us. If we kept our current population, we wouldn't last 100 years. That's the calculation. It's not really standard of living not withstanding. It was the amount of resources that everybody needs, and then just how much they're going to be consumed at our current population.
Well, I think that's the key. How many resources do we actually need in this country? We're using a lot more than we need.
Right, and I will agree with that, but we don't think that giving aid and the resources will help at all. I mean, if we do distribute it, yes, the current rate will stay that natural gas will run out in 64 years, but it's still going to run out in 64 years. So, developing countries like that.
Who told you that?
Research told me that.
Well, that might have been before they discovered shale.
I was going to say Barnett Shale. We need to sort of wrap up now. So can I just say something, if I may? First of all, I think we should devote part of our resource base, this charitable we're going to give, for blindfolds. Because this team will need blindfolds for walking past ponds.
We actually said we should save the child.
I just want to say a couple of just general things. The topic is interesting, but this is all about really is education. And I am first and foremost proud of the opportunity to work with Ben, because your team, and I haven't had a chance to meet you or spending time around with you, but put it themselves very well. You did very well tonight. Your argument, I thought, frankly, you're right, and Ben's right, that you can't take, Singer is not a delicatessen. You can't take part of it and leave the rest behind. You have to swallow the whole thing. That's a case you can make. I'm infinitely proud of our team, of this team over here. But what really impresses me about this, I've said it over and over again. I said it last spring when Mary and I were, or last fall when Mary and I, Dr. Gordon and I were giving a course on globalization. The skill you'll use more than any other skill when you get out into the real world. And I'm not a professor. I'm just some schmuck who was out in business in life. But I saw it over and over again. The skill you'll use more than any other is standing up there and presenting an argument. Up there can be sitting at a table. Up there can be an interview with somebody. Up there can be presenting a case to a bank for a loan or to our country for a new law. Your ability to make a case, to be persuasive and clear in what you say, is one of the most important things you'll learn in this school, or any school. And the case you make, whether it's Singer's argument or Schauder's arguments, or Rawls or Sandel, is less important than your ability to do what you did tonight. So I think, generally speaking, everybody here deserves a big round of applause. And this semester comes to an end. I hope all of you, not just the students in discourse, but also the ones in conflict, will appreciate the value of this and can continue to build a skill set. It's the most important thing I think you can learn here. That's my spiel.
I was very impressed with all of you.
Yep.
I thought it was great. You did a great job. Certainly made me think.
Well, and thanks again to all of you for being willing to do this. You've all basically volunteered, and so we all really appreciate it. And it's been great working with all of you. Yeah, just keep waiting on that.
We were talking extra credit.
It's the wrong person to be looking at you.
But on that note, someone did mention extra credit. I thought that would be.
We already
Let's
tried
save that for
that.
another discussion.
Credit to the poor. They need
We can play
Education. What do we need extra credit for?
It's you're all brilliant students, and it's been really great to work with you, and it's been really great to work with Bob. He brings some talents into the classroom that I just don't have, and so I really appreciate that, and I think that you all did really, really well, and I want to thank you all for doing this.
I'm going to say we're out of here.
I guess so.
Is this a place that they're finally saying?
No.
Sure. So you don't have to take one now. Good job if you're finally saying.
All right, so let's turn in the
Thank you all. Thank you everybody for coming too and listening to this. But hang on.